just giving you an agenda, basically, Mr. Pradeep will recap on what we had done in the networking last time, and then we are going to move forward on networking, like who, how, why, and we'll have some interesting topics like dating, how to network and use that in your favor, and we'll wrap up with some Q&A and discussion on that. So like I've always said, basically the aim of this program is to guide, educate, and help young people, young professionals in our social, professional, family, and personal lives. And we have been having this program for a year now. This is almost our 11th session. We started with work-life balance. We had a few sessions on work-life balance. Then we went into wealth management. We had 3 or 4 sessions on wealth management. Then soft skills, networking, and we'll move on from there. As always, the critical success factor for making this successful is having an ownership and commitment towards this program and having an open mind when we come out here in this discussion. Participation and regular attendance is also like gives us the most benefit once you have that. So as I was saying, we have covered these topics, and these were the topics which we had chosen when we had our first 2 sessions where we had a group forum and we came up with these few topics which we wanted to cover and discuss about in this Ichoose forum. So like I was saying, we worked on the work-life balance, wealth management. We had a couple of sessions on sharpening soft skills. Right now we are touching on networking, and plan is to move on into stress management and key traits of successful people in the next few sessions. So let me introduce today's panel to you. We have Mr. Pradeep Anand, Mr. Sandesh Sundaraman, Pratish Kanani, and Mr. Karthik Rajan. Everybody an expert in their different field, and they'll bring the different from their perspective, which is totally different from out here, and they'll bring their perspective on networking. Quick introduction on Pradeep Anand, and then I'll ask him to introduce the others. So I always like this, the cover page, the front page of his work. And I'm sure you know him, this is his 3rd session out here. He's been very active, and I really appreciate him for coming back out here and being a part of this forum. Mr. Pratish Mana, why don't I let you introduce? Okay. The floor is yours after that. So he has over 22 years of experience. He is the CEO of SenseCorp, extensive management consultancy experience with strong focus on strategy, governance, risk management, and solution delivery. He enjoys traveling, biking, and hiking. He has climbed the highest peaks in 2 continents, and he'll tell us the name of those peaks. He is the president of IIT Alumni of Greater Houston and vice chair of the IIT Global Conference we had last year out here. And with that, basically I will turn over the floor to Mr. Pradeep Anand. Please turn off your cell phones.
Thank you, Vivek, for having me and our team here today. We spoke last month about principles of principal networking, and I covered a lot of topics last time, so this is really presentation today is to cover some elements that I covered last month and add 2 points to the agenda today, which is networking, who, with, and how. But accompanying me are what I call people who are 10, 20, and 30 years younger than me, so that they can connect with you. And these are some of the best networkers I know in the city. And interestingly enough, 2 of them are presidents of IIT, alumni of Greater Houston. Sandy was the first president of the IIT AGH. Pratish is the current president. And Karthik, of course, is he's one of those people who's going to be a superstar. Very, very so. He works with GDS Suez. I'll introduce Sandy also after this. But the important thing is for me to kind of give you an idea about what I spoke about last time. Last time, what did I speak about? Well, I started with a story. And that story started in April 1983. And I'm going to go through it very quickly so I don't have to repeat it. Okay, the story really went something like this. I was down to my last dollar, and I was moving out of my apartment. I'd taken all my material possessions, put them into garbage bags, and distributed it amongst my friends' place in their garages. And when I was about to unplug my phone, the phone rang, and it was a call from a friend of mine. It was a colleague of mine who said, "Do you want to have lunch?" And I said, $10, I'm moving out of the apartment. I said yes, and I got into my faithful steed, a Ford Pinto, and I went to see him. And when I went to see him, he said, "Come on, let me buy you lunch, but first I've got to make copies." He was a small businessman. So he went to the next office to make copies, but I met this fellow. The president of the company walked up and said, "My name is Jim Corbett." I said, "You know what? Jim Corbett is a very famous name in India. There are national parks named after you." He said, no relative of mine. So I asked him if he was related to Jim Corbett, the champion boxer. He said, "Nah, I'm from Alabama." But in any case, long story short, he made me a job offer and said, "I can't pay you as much as you were making, but I want you to promise me that you're going to continue looking for a job because I don't want to keep somebody here who doesn't belong here. But I can use you for the period that you're here." 6 months later, I got a job offer from NL Industries, and the rest is history. The point is, going through all this, I learned a few lessons. And what were those lessons? Very simply, it was people connecting people. Lynn Holbert connected me to Jim Corbett, who gave me the platform that was necessary. Interestingly enough, the next job I got through a newspaper ad. Okay? It had nothing to do with networking, but the one that really saved my bacon, so to speak, I shouldn't say that here, but was networking. People refer people they trust. I knew Lynn since 1978, this was 1983, and he still trusted me, and he referred me. The other part was, I showed up. He invited me for lunch, I was down to my last $10, okay? And I wasn't sure whether I was going to get anything out of it, but I still went for the free sandwich, 0 sandwich. Never forget it. And I was networking, and I didn't know it. So what is networking? This is the stuff I talked about last time. What is networking? It's really about working on building deep relationships with your professional contacts. I'm not saying you don't have. These people started off as, what should I say, professional contacts initially, because you're part of the same alumni organization, but you've turned out to be very good friends too. So when I request them to participate and share their knowledge, they do. So there is a very fine line between professional and social and personal relationships. And networking essentially is like farming. You have to plant the seed before you get hungry. And finally, it's not who you know, it's how well you know them that is part of your network. Now, what is a network? I've already told you one. It's a group of people connected by trusted links. Trust is the vector. It's got strength and it's got direction, and it has to work both ways. And the last layer of, rather, your size of your network is defined by the first layer of trusted network that you have. Everything else flows from your first layer. You can go to my last presentation and see the details on this. I'm sure you have it on your website somewhere. And why network? As individuals, as an entrepreneur, whether you're in a job, we are always in the business of getting, keeping, or growing your job or your business. And every transaction in the world runs on faith and trust. And people buy and promote people they trust. So your professional network is your trusted network that will confidently rely on you for an idea, a product, a service, or a referral. So never forget that. The importance of your network is for your own self-interest, but it's important to also give forward. So it's not just adequate to take, but it's also important to give. And finally, it's all driven by trust. So to develop trust, you have to give first and take later if you really want to. So today's agenda, now I've taken 90 minutes of my last presentation and brought it down to like 5 minutes. So today's agenda is who to network with and how. And as I mentioned, we've got some people from associated with the IIT Alumni Organization of Houston. Key thing I want to mention over here is it is a terrific organization for professional growth. And all of you can become participants and members of it. All you have to do is go to that website, iitagh.org, and sign up. There are events every month, and you'll automatically get an email. And we honestly, as IIT alumni, it's open to everybody. The organization is run by IIT alumni, but membership is open to everybody. And by the way, there are no membership fees. Okay? It's free. Sounds good, doesn't it? But the value is incredible. So what does it just happened? This is today's Billboard cartoon. Okay? You know that character, so he asks his boss, who is his boss's boss, do you mind if I network with you to help my career? So the boss turns around and says, I would have said yes, but you made it feel all weird and creepy. You know, one of the questions somebody asked me last time was, how do you get people to network with you? And this is a guy going to his boss, and saying, I want to network with you. And he says, I would have said yes, but you made it feel all weird and creepy. Perhaps you could send me an email that I won't read. And so, of course, says, that will make you my best friend. You know, BFF. Interesting thing is, Ashok is an IIT alum, even in Delhi. It really is. When the series first started, there were jokes about IIT alums and accent talking to him and his head exploding. In any case, who is in your network? There are two sources of networks that you should be looking for. This is driven by some work that was done by Malcolm Gladwell, who talked about it some time ago. The connectors, mavens, and salesmen. Connectors are those people who know people. There are a lot of people who know people. I call them hubs, but connectors is a better term. Mavens are people who have content or knowledge. You need those too. And salesmen, they are experts. As my friend will talk about later, they're experts on relationships. At a minimum, I'll tell you, those two guys sitting in that corner are phenomenal. And what Sandy always calls the soft issues. Right, Pratish? The soft issues. And then also, I'd like to highlight, I talked about this last time, the ABCDs of your network. In anything that you want to accomplish, especially in the corporate world or in the business world, the ABCD, these are my terms. What I discovered was your network actually has about 4 components out there. The first one are your associates, people that you're connected with in one form or another. They could be mavens, connectors, or salesmen. But these associates actually know bridges, who have contacts at customer organizations, who then in turn know the decision makers within who can help you. So, who is in your network? You got a 3x4 matrix out here, and they'll highlight a little more on how to go about it. But the most important thing in terms of how that I want to talk about, I did talk about it last time too, is how do you create trust? The question of how do you create trust, and there are two dimensions to consider. The first one, there is a truster and a trustee. Now, who is the truster and who is the trustee? Let's assume that you are the trustee, and the person you want to create a trusted relationship with is the truster. The truster's personal factors makes a huge difference. For example, the Dilbert pointy-head boss that was out there, he had very low risk tolerance. His level of adjustment to the world was terrible, and his relative power with respect to Ashok was incredibly high. So that makes it a very difficult environment to create a trusted relationship. The other individual's risk tolerance literally cannot be very high. If they are they need to be a little risk averse to take that first step to create that relationship with you. You also need to pick people whose level of adjustment. What do I mean by level of adjustment? Level of adjustment essentially is how they see the world. Are they constantly in a state of anxiety? Do they constantly feel that someone is out there trying to take advantage of them? Do they feel that the world is out to get them? If yes, then it is very difficult to create a trusted relationship. However, if on the other hand, the level of adjustment is good, these people are usually optimistic, they consider the world to be benign, you'll find that the ability to create that trusted relationship is much higher. And finally, on a personal level, is really what is the relative power. For example, the trusted relationship between you and your boss changes dramatically depending on how much power the boss has over you. The higher the degree of relative power in favor of the other person, the lesser the chance that you're going to trust me on that one. That's how it works. Very similarly, when you're going out there to network, you've got to look in terms of the degree to which there is relative power between that individual and you in some kind of a informal or formal way. If you can judge that very well, the greater the relative power difference between the two of you, the lesser the chance that that person would be willing to endow you with any trusted relationship. That's exactly what that pointy-head boss was doing to Ashok. But how can you, on the other hand, create a trusted relationship? These are all what I call situational factors. These are out of control for both you as well as the other person. Situational factors. You can do things that will increase, this is the opposite of risk. That can increase the security that that other person feels in you. You can eliminate this whole concept of risk, there being any risk associated with any kind of relationship with you. The second element is, this works. This is based on evolutionary psychology. We are still a very tribal people. How many people out here are Jains? Okay, I don't have to say anything more than that. Okay? This is Jain Bishop Party, right? So, but the thing is, the greater the number of similarities, we are all, how many of you are not from India? Okay, that's another one. So there are a lot of similarities, so the degree to which people will trust. I've known these three gentlemen for a very, very long time. Probably, in their respective ages, so to speak, but for a very long time. But how does that happen? A lot of it has to do with number of similarities. And that's one of the reasons why you've got to play that similarity game to the degree that you can. However, having said that, there are times, particularly in what I would call when we are in an immigrant environment, which is slightly different, the number of similarities sometimes goes against you, because there is such a thing as reverse discrimination, where just because you and I come from the same continent or the same country does not necessarily mean I'm going to give you any kind of a preferential treatment. And that is actually driven by the individual's personal factors as opposed to situational factors. But you must play the number of similarities. But the more important thing for us in this environment is to show similarities in values, because that is what ultimately creates the trusted relationship. And the other part is alignment of interests. If your interests and the other individual's interests are in the same direction, no problem. Benevolent concern. Benevolent concern is a very interesting one, because you have to also show, this is one way of showing that you are not doing what you're doing in self-interest. For your own self-interest, for your own betterment. All the people who are arranging all these conversations and conferences, Vivek, and all your volunteers out here are doing what they're doing out of benevolent concern for JDP. You need to understand that. They're not doing it out of self-interest. Okay? It's an altruistic way of looking at it, and that shows values of individuals. So do look for people who show benevolent concern to build trust, because these are the kinds of individuals that you will trust. Of course, when you are in a business-to-business environment, capability plays a very important point. People will trust you when you show capability, when you show benevolent concern. Predictability, integrity, these are all things that go without saying. And finally, trust has a lot to do with communication. And we talked a lot about this last time. People trust people who speak the same language and we understand each other. Very often, because of a difference in different environments that we all come from, there may be a tendency to talk past each other even though we are talking the same language. This is very important that you get rid of ambiguity in your language. Okay? For example, I have a friend who will never ask me to do anything except through a question. He never asks me, why don't you do that? So it would be the question. That itself is too powerful. He go through this very, very convoluted way of asking a question, and I'm supposed to understand what he's thinking, and then I'm supposed to do something, and it just drives me nuts. Because I don't know when he asks a question whether he's expecting an answer or an action. It just drives me nuts. So guess what? In terms, I trust that guy because I've known him for a very long time. But please avoid any kind of indirect conversations, particularly in an environment like the United States. Level of communication that includes etiquette, please and thank you, we talked quite a bit about it. This is very important. Showing concern for the other individual through communication, very important. So these are the kinds of situational factors that will actually enhance the trust of the other individual. Okay? At the end of the day, people need to trust you. They need to have a trusted relationship with you for you to be successful in creating your networks and using them or not using them. And I can talk a little bit more on how I use my networks. But these are the 2 points I wanted to make. And bottom line, never ask anything from someone you don't have a relationship with. Okay? That is not networking. Don't go to a meeting, and if you don't know somebody, give a card and say, I want business for it. It doesn't work. Okay? It doesn't work. And the second point is the quality of your professional network is not an accident. Okay? It is built one person at a time, and you need to work at it, show up. All the elements I talked about earlier as well as last month. And practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And that's my part. The next speaker is Pratish Kanani. Pratish.
Thanks, Pradeep. That is a really good introduction into networking and all that it takes to really try to make that work. I think the introductions were already done, so I'm going to quickly skip over this, but just quick FYI, I'm the CEO of Sense Corp, a management consulting firm. I love traveling, love hiking. 3 years ago, I was right somewhere up there on that mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro. Last year, Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the continental U.S. So now my next quest is trying to figure out for 2015 what's in the cards. So we'll see what happens there. All right, so let's talk about networking, and maybe because I'm more of a process or a kind of technology-oriented person, I think of networking in structured terms. And so when I think about it in those terms, one of the things that I think makes sense to kind of look at is a very strong tool that's out there, which is the power of LinkedIn, right? So quick show of hands here, how many people have a LinkedIn profile? All right, so a number of people here have LinkedIn profiles. That's great. What this also reminds me, and looking at the presentation that Pradeep went through, which was when you think about how to connect up with people through networks or have that trusted relationship. I love watching The Big Bang Theory. One of the characters there, Sheldon, wants to have a conversation with one of his lab mates, but he's not a friend. So he figures out this process on how to become a friend with this person. Seems like a few people have seen that episode, right? Yeah. So I look at that and it's like, okay, so there's going to be a process. Maybe I'm not that bad, right? But I want to try to figure out what's the process here. All right, so as we look at that, some basic rules that we can start with. Number one, when you're looking at using LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is just a tool to help you through the process and working through networking. It's the quality or the strength or the trust of that network that's important, much more over the quality or the size of your network. So LinkedIn, everybody's trying to say, all right, well, we need to hit that magical number of 500 plus and become kind of an A-grade networker. All right, that's one thing. But if you've got 500 people you're connected to, but the strength of that network is not strong, I would rather a person who has 50 people in their network and a very strong network, right? A very strong trusted network. So the strength of that network is really important. Now, that's not to say that you don't need to keep looking to grow your network. Yes, you do, but never at the cost of the quality of your network. All right, so once we have that, the next thing is you've got to make sure you keep it professional. So here is some text from a person's LinkedIn profile where they talk a little bit about themselves, and on their profile it says, two ungrateful daughters, 2 egocentric brothers. You never want to have that on your LinkedIn profile. If you've got personal baggage, don't bring it to your professional resume. Your LinkedIn profile is your professional resume. No typos, keep it clean, keep the language crisp. That's what you want to have out there. Very professional. All right? Okay. So the next thing with that is you want to keep it fresh. By this, what I mean is, so let's say you've got 450 people in your network. It'd be interesting to go through your network and look at all the names and try to figure out how many of those people have you actually reached out to in the last 3 months, or the last 6 months, or the last year. And I've got some people in my network that I've been connected to for a couple of years that after a certain point, you can look at that and you say, all right, you know what, I really haven't touched base with this person. I need to do something targeted to try to connect up with this person. I need to either send them an email, I worked with them a while ago, I need to find some reason to just try and keep that connection alive. So in a very targeted way, you look to try and look at the people that you're connected with and figure out what are the people there that you want to make sure that you're connecting with in some way. And there's various reasons, various ways that you can connect up with them. The next is keeping it active, or keeping it fresh, but keeping it active in a broad sense. And so I'll give you an example of this. Not directly on LinkedIn, but Pradeep does this in an amazing way. So he'll send out an email, and here's a joke that he sent out. He sends out a number of these emails every so often. And this basically says, all right, smiley face on it, the past, the present, and the future walked into a bar. It is a tense situation. All right, so a little bit of a joke. email, and that's it. Nothing more than that. Here I am drinking my coffee in my morning, I look at this email, what's the first thing that I think of? Okay, hey Pradeep, okay, here's another one of your jokes, right? It brings a smile to my face, and if I haven't connected up with Pradeep in a while, it gives me a thought or just a reminder that, hey, you know what, maybe I should connect up with Pradeep, right? So it's, now this is Pradeep's way of doing it. I'm not recommending that everybody starts sending emails with jokes around. That's not the goal, right? But it's trying to figure out the thing that you've got that can put you up on the forefront of people's minds, so that as they're thinking about things, they look at that and they say, hey, okay, you know, I remember, I need to connect up with this person. So for example, one of the ways is make contributions on LinkedIn, because that's what we were kind of talking about here. So on LinkedIn, there's a way where you can post articles about different kinds of things and have the group that's connected with you see the stuff that's coming through. Now, of course, you don't want to post an article saying there's a war in the Middle East right now. I think everybody kind of knows that. But if you posted an article that said, this is one of the best articles that I've read about the future of the energy industry and the perils over the next 20 years. I'll tell you, I would look at that article. Not only would I look at that article, I would probably post a comment back to you. You'd probably reply back to me, and maybe a week later we'd be having coffee. Okay? I mean, that's kind of to a certain extent how it works as well. You've got to find a way to connect, a way to contribute, a way to put something out there. The other thing that you can do is you can also post your own articles. So this is where Pradeep was talking about the fact that if you're a content group, if there's something that you are good at, take a stab at trying to write it, put it out there. Put your thoughts, become a subject matter expert. People will want to start connecting to you because of that. And they'll look to find reasons to stay connected with you. Okay, so the next thing then is you want to make sure you're engaging. And this is where you go from kind of the online world to kind of an offline world, where whether it's through the alumni organization, like the IT alumni, right? Whether it's with charitable organizations, whether it's with conferences, whether, let's say you've got the OTC conference that's taking place, and there's the ability for you to connect and work and contribute and help with that, or anything else as well. So as you think about the engaging part, the piece here related to trying to engage, you want people to see you in action. You want them to be able to have a reason to connect with you. So some sort of a platform, right? We all meet people at work. You want to find a reason to have the ability to meet people outside of work. So folks that are not part of your natural network. And then, through all of this, of course, you're working on something that gives you reason to be proud of, delivering something, doing something, reaching a milestone, making a contribution, providing to the local community. And that just gives you, a good sense of accomplishment. So you do all that, and the next thing is, you now want to have a conversation with that person. It's so much easier picking up the phone and just saying, hey, I've got something I need to ask you. Like, okay, sure, what do you need? Very easy conversation. Much better than going to his boss and saying, can I network with you, right? So, step one, which is, creating business cards or connecting on LinkedIn, it's really the same thing. In the old days, it was, hey, here's my business card, and you did that. In today's world, here's my LinkedIn connection, I'm going to connect up with you. All right, so you've done that. What's important, really, is everything else that comes after that. So with that, thank you.
This is the first time I've seen him in action with a presentation of this sort. Pradeep is very organized. We all worked at the IIT conference, it killed us almost, right? We're lucky to have survived that. But our next speaker is Karthik Rajan, and he's the sales manager at GDS Suez, graduate of BITS Pilani, 1997, he just told me. He's much older than he looks. That's the reason I asked him. Very experienced and very knowledgeable on relationships. Karthik Rajan.
you, Pradeep. So he said, my colleague here is very well organized. I just want to come and talk to you. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, sure. So sometimes I like to be engaged when I look at people and talk to them. So it was more an impromptu invite from Pradeep on Friday, so I'm here. So he talked about, well, we can talk about my background. 3 things I wanted to do, but I wanted to do it on the clock, so which the third thing would be an optional one. The first thing I wanted to talk about was networking in a sense of what it means in a sales world. So connect the 2 pieces. So a couple of months ago, I was invited to a presentation for entrepreneurs, and they said, we would like for you to come and talk about how to create revenue, how to enhance sales. I said, interesting. So you've had a lot of people, and my background is a little different than most salespeople per se, because I was doing modeling work for many, many years. And I said, I'm not going to sit in front of the computer all my life. I like meeting people, working with people. So I did the other end of the spectrum, working in sales management. So they said, that's what we found interesting about your profile. We'd like you to come and talk to some of our entrepreneurs. I said, why? What's the deal? Many of them are very technical guys who are building businesses and very interested. And they quickly realized that revenue generation involves networking, finding the right people, and making it happen. And that's what is in essence of the business. And if you bring in a very professional salesperson, they're going to talk about how to, what to talk, what to object, what to do, and how to make those conversations. And sometimes they would like to hear from people with similar backgrounds and a perspective from the other end. So I said, oh, that's great. Just let me know what kind of questions they would like me to answer. So the first question was, how do I meet customers? It's not about targeting who's the target customer. It's the same thing as networking. How do I get the right people to network? The second question was, there's different shapes and forms. These were the 3 or 4 questions I saw. Second one was, how do I build my credibility with them with the short time I had? The third one was, how do I build it build up a trust with them? And the fourth one was, okay, I build up a trust, how do I take it to the next level? And then the last one was, how do I close the business? So let's only talk about the first few because those are the hardest. And that's part of networking, what makes it very challenging too. It's it's not trivial to go and meet somebody you do not know most of the time. Once you know the people, it's a different kind of networking. It's a little easier. Not knowing people, going and meeting them, asking for a job, or if in your mind your goal is to get a job, or get a business, or to do something, it's a little challenging on that. So that's the hardest part. It's not just for each one of you or any part. It's practically for almost all of us. That question, as part of the essence of the network, is networking. It's a hard one. So how do you tackle that issue? So you look at those 5 questions. So I'm going to only focus on the 1 and 2 there. How do you, meet the people you really want to do? And what do you say that builds your credibility? And then how do you earn their trust? The rest of them are more it depends on what activities you're looking at. But those 3 questions, you'll find a way to answer in this discussion. So if you look at all the 5 questions, it's very similar to replacing it with a situation like a dating scenario. How do I meet a person? So this was for an audience. So everybody in some shape or form has met people in a social setting to address the same thing as dating. How do you meet the people? How do you earn their trust? Build your credibility, earn their trust. How do you take it to a next level? And then hopefully convert it into a successful relationship. So it's the same set of questions, whether it is in a scenario of dating, in a scenario of sales, or in a scenario of networking per se. So what would it mean for the first 2? So my takeaway was, typically look at your own experiences when you felt you've clicked with people. Be yourself. First, be yourself is what I would say. Don't try to be someone you're not. It will always show. Your voice doesn't matter. Your body language, which is 80% of what you really talk, shows it up. So just be yourself. Be authentic. That's the first thing. How would I be interesting to somebody if I'm just being authentic? Sometimes the key to that is be interested in them, don't be interested. So sometimes if you go and build a relationship with people, when you want to meet somebody, and I'll answer the first question, how you would be getting the right odds, but let's talk about building credibility and trust. Credibility is
sometimes the easiest way to build credibility, and the one that never fails, in my opinion, if you want to take away one thing, is to be a good listener. Number one, the only thing that matters. It's not about what you know, what subject matter expertise you have. It does not matter. It does not matter what you know. It does not matter how well you know information. To build a network, it matters that you are interested in what the other person has to say. Listening is the number one skill. Think about any relationships you have had which you found was you've connected with people. That would be a single ingredient you will find very common. People enjoy people who listen to them. So how do you give and take? It's all about a give and a take. And the give, in this case, is you're listening to people. So that is my opinion. There's a lot of books, a lot of things about building credibility. Instantaneously, you find credibility. Then how do you connect? That will always be the question. There is always something, the best way to connect is to reflect back what they told you. It's always to say, the best analogy I would say is at home, and if you have spouses and you're watching TV, and your spouse is saying something, you say, you're not actively listening. That can drive people bonkers. But if you can reflect back what they just told you and summarize it, it gets you a good moment of credibility. Okay? Trust, credibility. Reflect back what other person is saying, not what you have to say. But if you can take a piece of your own experience, one small piece of whatever you have, and add it to that element that we just talked about, which would be, hey, if I heard you right, this is what you said, or in your own words. And by the way, from my own experiences, this is what I see. Then you've connected with the person. So it is not about knowing a lot of stuff, being very credible, knowing all the information. Absolutely not. It's about believing that you have two legs, the other person also has two legs, standing in front of them, listening to them, and understanding where they are coming from, and adding a little bit of your sequence to it. So in my opinion, those are, in the networking sense, easy ones to do. Once you have found the right person to sit across and talk to, or stand across and talk to. But the hardest one, in my opinion, is how do you meet those people? The people you want. Oh, I want to find a job somewhere. How am I going to meet those people? So this is where statistics is pretty interesting. So I will answer this with a statistical, couple of interesting statistics. So I looked up about dating online, American statistics of what are the success rates with dating. They said that people, so just to quote, only 17% of contacts made through references by friends, relatives, and well-wishers work out. Only 17% of those dates work out to the second date. So what does that mean? If you think about it, only 2 in 10 that people who know people introduce you works out. That means you have to siphon out 8 of them before you know those 2. So it's pretty hard to keep up your momentum when you have to meet 10 people and only 2 will click and 8 will not click. Okay? That's an interesting statistic. Even if you network, you need to know. Like the way Pradeep said, it's about farming. If you think, I need a job, I'm going to start networking now, you're pretty much too late. You have to at least meet 10 people, and 8 is going to be a dead end. And still you have to keep your motivation going. That's going to be challenging, just to take the analogy from that statistic. But the interesting part, which nobody talks about, is 52% of marriages in America are based on the first introductions by family and friends, or family and friends. So if you just assume that all those 20%, that means 1 in 10 works out, or 50% of this. So if it clicks within the 2, it translates into a good relationship, at least one of them. So the takeaway, if you want to take the analogy from it, how do you meet people is, definitely use your LinkedIn networks, good networks. Look for the people you know in your world, meet them, as he said, show up, meet with them. 8 out of 10 will never work, likely. Only 2 in 10 will work. Don't get disheartened, just know that stat. And 1 in 10, if it's successful, you're golden. Having been in sales, I can tell you, new businesses, 1 in 10, it's golden. It's how you handle the 9 of them is the challenging part. So that is what I would say. And I think about 10 minutes is up, and the other advice I would say is, if there's one thing you want to remember on this conversation, it would be a damn good listener. Anybody you want to meet, be a good listener. Reflect on what they say. What you know is not the most important thing. What they have to say is an important thing. And that means you need not be the smartest guy in the room or the gal in the room. You just have to be authentic. You just have to be yourself. Just be yourself. Most of the time it works. That would be my honest advice. Thank you.
That was very good, wasn't it? Our next speaker is Sundaram Srinivasan, also known as Sandy. He has a very long resume, but I'm going to summarize it by saying I've known him probably since he first came to Houston. He used to work for Schlumberger, and he just gave me a card that says he works for this company called Zentech Inc., Innovative Engineering Solutions, where he is the VP of Business Development. He just joined this company. But for the longest time, after graduating from IIT Delhi in the mid-80s, he joined a company that was later taken over by Schlumberger, right? And when he moved to Houston, I had the fair fortune of meeting him, and we've been very good friends since then. Sandy and I not only do a lot of activities together, but we have also had this rare opportunity where we performed at the Improv together. We both have done stand-up comedy together, which is an unusual thing. And once, I think we even got paid for it. But most important thing is really the reason he's here is that not only because he's a terrific speaker, but his ability, he's written actually an article in the Journal of Petroleum Technology on networking. He gives it a lot of thought, he helps people with it, and he himself is a terrific networker in the right sense of the term. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you Sandy Srinivasan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that maybe over introduction. So, if you take a little recap from the very important message that Karthik passed about being a good listener. Karthik spoke about benevolent concern, he spoke about credibility and the importance of listening. And Prateek gave you very nice structure and made sure that the other three old farts didn't forget that there was modern technology methods out there like LinkedIn, etc. Right? So that's what you kind of got so far. So, forget all you were taught as children. You're adults now. It's okay to talk to strangers. As kids, you're always told, don't talk to strangers. You're adults now. It's okay to talk to strangers. And that is the only, you've got to get out of that comfort zone, as most of these speakers before me have very aptly pointed out. Okay? So, with all these statistics, numbers, thoughts, some people diligently taking notes, you might be thinking, this sounds all good, but it sounds a bit, hazy, it's not really, I can't really touch it, it's a bit not clear. Okay? So let me give you some numbers. Who here has heard of the theory of the 6 degrees of separation? Anyone? You have? Okay, so what's the 6 degrees of separation theory?
Basically, you are related to any other person in the world by 6 connections.
Phenomenal. Okay, so think about what he just said, right? You are connected to anybody else on the planet and only 5 people between you. All of a sudden, this connecting business seems simple. Of course, as these people very aptly pointed out, it's finding the links and getting through them. That's where the trick comes, right? And in fact, it's not just a theory. It was actually Etienne de Sola Pool from MIT actually tried to prove it mathematically with the probability function and so on and so forth. And they kind of gave that up. But it has been proven empirically by letters being sent around the world. So a guy gave a letter to, let's say you, and said, okay, you've got to deliver this letter to Mr. Chibonga in the Congo. You have no clue who he is. But your task is to give that letter to who you believe in your mind has the most likelihood of knowing the gentleman in Congo, with the same instructions. Doing that with a lot of iterative process, he did come to that point. Okay? So I just thought I'd share that little snippet. I normally do a 1 hour talk on networking, so I can't do the whole shebang, but I'm just trying to throw out some snippets from that. So how many of you are technical engineers? Finance. Okay, good. So you've got to stay with me. I don't have a slide, but you've got to stay with me. Okay? So imagine, and I'm going to do it from your point of reference. X-axis this way, right? Y-axis this way. Do it from your point of reference, all right? On the x-axis is very, very high level of seriousness. How serious are you? You're more on the x-axis. You're not very serious this year, okay? On the y-axis is, what's in it for me? How many sales deals did I close? How many dates did I get? How many leads did I get? Okay, so the y-axis is high, what's in it for me? And below is not so much in it for me. So if you look at the top right quadrant from your frame of reference, high what's in it for me, high level of seriousness, I think these three gentlemen before me have done incredible justice to all the good stuff that you can do in that quadrant. Okay? They did, however, touch occasionally on some very good bullets, because they didn't have the time to go through it all. And I remind you of what I started, colleagues talked about benevolent concern. I translate that to sincerity, first of all. And I'm going to share with you a few snippets, not on that quadrant right there, but on the quadrant below. If you do practice and successfully execute what you heard from the three gentlemen before, it is already phenomenal. But I want to suggest to you something of what I call on the wild side, okay? If you think of that quadrant, it's very serious, nothing in it for you. If you truly, sincerely practice a bit of that quadrant of networking, you may get nothing at all whatsoever if you measure it from the typical what's in it for me. But by golly, there is something called the law of unintended consequences. What you do get from that, if and when you get it, is incredible, immeasurable, and 10,000 times more than what you get just from that one call. However, a word of caution. If you do that with the strategic thoughts and intent that I know that I'm going to get something phenomenal and therefore I'm going to indulge in this quadrant, it will never happen either. Okay? Sounds good. This is a bit of Gandhism, Sangeet. You've heard this before. What do you really mean? How can I put this into practice? And you can put it into practice very simply. Try this out. The next time you go for a networking session, where otherwise, normally you will be looking out for people who would be good leads for you, who would be good for your business, who would give you good business leads, people you want to network with from the standard point of view, completely change your mind thought process. Say for this evening and this evening alone, don't do it every time, okay? But just try it out once. This evening and this evening alone, for this networking session, I'm going to actively look for somebody that I can help. No unconditional. That's, I guess, the word I was looking for. Okay? So, my longish talk, I'm getting. Do I have some time? No? Okay? Alright. So, let me share a personal story. I'll just give you. So, I recently left Schlumberger, as Pradeep rightly pointed out. And I joined this company called Zentech. It's a small company. So as I jokingly say, I moved from 40 to 20, 40 billion to 20 billion, right? But it's great fun, great group of guys, etc. And so the CEO and myself were in the elevator this Tuesday. And we were going up to meet a client with a drilling contract. as we went up, somebody else got in the elevator. And he was on the side, we went up a few floors. And I said, Tom, is that you? Because obviously, last time I met Tom was 15 years ago. Okay? Tom was a young trainee those days who had come fresh into Islam. And I had gone out of my way to help him. I just gone the extra mile to take care. He had a few issues, etc. I'm not going to get into some of his personal issues and so on and so forth. He happens to be the CEO of the company that we were going to see. Now, the actions that I took 15 years ago were not with the strategic intent that one day, 15 years later, I'm going to meet this guy, he's going to be the CEO of a company and he's going to give me sales leads, right? But my goodness, the business is, as a result, done. Incredible, immeasurable, you cannot even, I mean, it's the entire company is open. It's you, Sunny, not an issue, right? So that was a little story we had to share about. I always like to play some games, so we're going to play some games. So I'm going to request those of you there to come over here, and everybody I'm going to request to find a partner. There are prizes for this game, so there is something in it for you, okay? So you find yourself a partner, anybody, it doesn't matter, and we're going to have a game of strength. We're going to play arm wrestling, okay? So find a partner, we're going to arm wrestle. Come. No. Okay, so first of all, I need one volunteer to help me conduct the game from you guys. Let me see how many guys. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay, so I'll tell you what. Why don't you guys? Karthik, so Karthik and Pradeep, give them a hand. They're going to help me conduct the game here. Usually what happens is the person that volunteers gets the first prize. You were even, so that's fine. So are you in a position to assume the position of arm wrestling? Get ready, right? Okay, and then listen to the rules. Don't start. Yeah, bring chairs, stop. Bring tray. Okay, come on, be ready. Don't start yet. Don't start yet. Don't start yet. Just assume the position and you say, don't start yet. I have told you the rules.
Sit on the other side.
I have told you the rules. Yeah, okay, move chairs.
Take the chairs.
Indulgent old man, come on, play a game with me.
Yeah, play some game. I'm just going to give you
Okay, everyone ready? Okay, rule number 1, only those who play are eligible for prizes. Okay, so start getting moved. Okay, everyone ready? Okay. You just stand if you want and arm wrestle. Everyone ready? You ready? Are you ready? You guys ready? You ready? You ready? Just don't start yet. Okay, you ready? You ready? You ready? Jumping? Okay. Good. So here's the deal, and my judges are going to watch. Okay, no cheating. All right. So here's the deal.
Whatever judge.
When I say start, you will start to arm wrestle. However, all of you will have your eyes closed. You're not allowed to look at your partner. All right. Any cheating? So I've got my volunteers checking it out. No cheating. Okay. So everybody close your eyes right now. No, nobody should open their eyes anymore. Okay, good. And everybody's eyes closed now. See, cheating has started right here already.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Oh, goodness. No, everyone close their eyes. Okay, now listen to the rules, okay? Rules are very simple. When I say start, you start to arm wrestle. When I say stop, you stop. And of course, every time
Close your eyes.
the back of the hand touches the table, you get a point. Okay? Alright. Ready? Steady, go!
Eyes closed. What is this?
Stop! Excellent! Excellent. Stand up, everybody. Everybody stand up. Give yourself a big hand. Good job. Sit back in your spots. That's it. Simple game, right? Easy game. Okay. So here are my prizes coming up here. All right. Any team that had 40 points? Ridiculous. What's he talking about, right? That's what your eyes just told me. Did I? Did your eyes just tell me that? Right? Okay, good. Okay. 30? 20? If I were to tell you that the maximum points scored in this game has been 52, would you believe me?
No. Not in that time span.
Not in that time span. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's go. 5.
What was the measure?
4, 3, 2, 1. Anybody with 1 point? All right. Who are the 1-pointers? Stand up.
No.
Okay, good. So give them a hand. That's 1 point right there. 1 point right there. Okay. And all of you are still wondering, what on earth is this guy doing? And I'm going to leave you with this punch that you will remember for a long time. I said there was 1 point every time the back of the hand hit the table. I didn't say it had to be the back of the hand of the other person.
Oh,
Give and thou shalt receive. You could have just let your hand go and bang. Your team will score as many points as you wanted, right? If you give, actively do networking with the intent of giving, you can indeed, my friend, move from the range of incredulity and come to the range of 52 points in the time span given. With that, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We were
Yes, sir. Now that I find a little difficult to believe. But a good attempt. So questions?
Sorry, back to close back now. Yep. Here's the thing. You heard last, no, 2 months ago, June 29, and today, a lot of content about networking. And last time, after I spoke, there were questions that came on and on and on for the longest time. So, at this time, I want to open the floor for questions for our speakers and me, if necessary, but preferably for the speakers. Who wants to start? Go ahead.
I work with vendors regularly, and the large vendors, and it gets very challenging sometimes, especially with the salespeople, because they are forceful in terms and sometimes to build the relationship, seeing the opportunity which my department can provide. Okay, so sometimes it gets challenging from a client perspective to handle those situations, because they do want to build a strong network, and I understand that I do need to utilize the vendors, okay, to move forward, so I can't ignore them as well, okay. But the relationship, okay, sometimes you do think they're building the relationship because for the benefit, okay, and once they see the benefit, they have achieved it, and somebody else gets into that position, okay, you are out, okay, and that relationship probably will not continue for a long time, and especially when you want from them to help you, that may not happen. So how do you handle those situations?
Sales question. So basically, just for a clarification, so you are on the sales side, or you're the salesperson is from the vendor side?
I'm the client side. Vendor is trying to sell.
Supply chain. Okay. My 2 cents is, if you have very aggressive salespeople, shy away from them, because back to the point you just said, if there's nothing in it for you, there's not much going to be in it for you after the transaction. So the point he made is, you need to look for givers, not for takers all the time. Okay, and there is always as a consequence of working with you, business happens, it's good. But most of our kind of good sales is ask us, seat at the table, but not necessarily to be very aggressive about going after that, if that's what I heard right from the conversations. So if you try to screen them out in a way that it will be beneficial, it's a two-way street, it's good to you. So what your first instincts are, mostly it's correct about most people, most of the time. But after a while, you can always validate it. I don't know whether it answered it, but most of the time you have to just start screening them early.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe just a couple of thoughts on that in terms of going back to some of my experiences handling that. So, first of all, you know the school of thought I'm on, right? Any kind of network or any kind of relationship, if there's even an iota of thought that I'm going to get something out of it,
So
to me, it's not valid. I mean, it's valid, but you know what I'm trying to get at. It creates frustration, right? It creates, oh my goodness, look, I have to look, now he's not helping me. It creates this kind of, because we're all human beings and we tend to react. So if, over time, if you can get that out of the system already, that's helpful. But if I come specifically to the handling of vendor, be incredibly fair, be incredibly, what I call a good paymaster. When I say a good paymaster, that doesn't mean paying the highest price, but you're willing to pay extra for good quality, for example. And very, very important in my opinion, from a business perspective, pay your suppliers on time. Don't, the word about was about to come out, but it's the James Center, but don't give a hard time to suppliers. Okay? Put it down.
Thank you.
Fair? Is that a fair answer? Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Yes, so I think from my perspective, I work with a firm that provides services to clients, and so one of the things that we go out of our way to think about in terms of our customers is if we're in a situation where our customers are looking for contractors and somebody can just come in very specific, it's very task-oriented versus I'm looking for a consulting relationship, I'm looking for a partner, I'm looking for somebody that's an equal, that's going to be a thought leader. Those are the things that we want. We try to shy away from kind of the contractor-type relationship. Because when we come to that relationship, it's hard to compete other than probably on something like price. And for us, we look at that and we say, no, we have more to offer than that. And so we look for the relationships that are mutually beneficial, that align. And we try to shy away from the relationships where we feel that those relationships don't work for us because in the long run, there's something there that eventually will not work out.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask a few questions. What kind of a company is your from?
I work for oil services company Halliburton.
Are you? Now, Halliburton is a very, Schlumberger, Halliburton, a very large oil field service company. You're about $30 billion now?
Around that.
Around that. And so your process of getting suppliers is very long and very detailed. And on top of that, you take what, 45 days to pay your vendors?
90.
It's 90.
So what do you
I
think
get paid in
that?
90.
Very important. Pay suppliers on time.
No, but they do pay on time. But in the contract, I think it's on the day of the contract, because of SAP and all these wonderful things, they do pay on time.
Sorry yes programs. I'm sorry. I mean, we call them sorry yes programs.
Oh.
What's that?
They use SAP,
Yeah.
and we call these sorry yes programs because even if my invoice is more by a penny, it stops payment.
Correct. Sorry, yes, program. Sorry. Now, when you're part of a large
I'm sorry, sometimes you have to stop that.
The whole idea is, we are here to talk about networking, the relationship that you may have with your vendors. There are people within your vendor organization who also need a perspective of what your requirements are. So the relationship between organizations is done by what is called the buying center within the selling organization, buying organization, and the selling organization. And your salesperson is just a point person in this entire thing. Okay? If you really want to understand your suppliers, you got to understand the organization as opposed to the salesperson. The salesperson is there to establish the relationship and take care of transactions. Okay? So be very clear about that. So I don't think this is going to be a situation, since it is transaction oriented, it is about give and take. Okay? So this may not be the right place for looking for that kind of relationship. But however, the salesperson's bosses and getting into their product development program and insights into them actually will create much better rewards for you than just dealing with the sales organization.
Thank you.
Okay?
The point, managing sales on the other side, I can say,
very few customers. I'll give you an example. So you do make a phone call to a call center. You have a problem with your credit card. You do all of those things. They always ask you, how do you do? How is your day? How many times you as a customer ask them how they do? How do they do? You're so focused on your end. If it's a give and take, it needs to be a two-way street. So just reflecting back again, as I said, what do you do for it? It's a give and a take. And the give, what do you give to the client side? It's very easy to ask them, hey, what's going on in your world? Just like how they are coming here and doing this sales. Try that out on. Salespeople are wonderful at pouring their heart out, particularly because not a lot of people ask them, I believe. So that could even be a game changer for you when you're wondering if they would be just based on the transaction they're going to do. So just take it a two-way street and look at it and reflect back as well as what I would say. From your own perspective, which you have full control over.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Shekhar and I work with a software company who has software service.
You have to speak up.
Okay, my name is Shekhar and I work with a software company who has software for risk management. My question is, did any of you came across a situation where you could not move forward with the relationship or a connection because of the part of the world you come from or the culture or the dietary restrictions you have when you meet your connections and stuff like that?
It's a very good question.
Yes, and I don't know how many people here has came across this, but sometimes you do because you don't make that connection because you do not have certain diets or certain habits. And
I'm 100% vegetarian.
Yes.
I'll just be honest about it and straight shooting about it. I work in an organization where I'm the only non-white guy managing a big sales organization, a couple of $1 billion. It's not who you are, it's what you bring to the table. Let's make sure that's very clear. What you said is true. I'll give you 2-3 examples, and this is something I was also told when I was moving down here to manage sales of all states, Texas, as a vegetarian, to selling electricity. It's stereotypically, I'm not the right candidate for managing that kind of teams. I can tell you I've closed more deals in steakhouses without eating one iota of meat. And just to humor you here, this is a good example is, I always call in a little earlier, let the chef know. Steakhouses, just to give you a point, they're wonderful, the chefs are already creative, that's why they're chefs at steakhouses. But they always make steak, okay? So all I say is, there is no bars, the only constraint is I want vegetarian food, and I want your creativity to flow. So I call ahead or I talk to them. I have a wonderful food on my table, which is different from others, but you know what, even if the president is having lunch at the other table, the chef comes by my table and asks me, how was the food? And everybody notices and says, man, this guy should be some big shot knowing people here. Okay? So you can take your disadvantage to your, or perceived disadvantage to your advantage. Nothing prevents you from closing transactions. The element of trust is you have to be a little bit consistent of who you are. Okay? So if they can place you where you are, it helps in making transactions. If they cannot place who you are, that is where a lot of challenges come in. Oh, that's Karthik, he's a vegetarian, he's going to be this way, but that's what he brings to the table. If they have that clarity and they see value in it, they will talk to you. So all of those things are perceived ways, you can always change them to your advantage. Okay, being unique, they always say marketing, have your own USP. You can make your features your own USP. That's what I would say. So it's a good question.
Thank you.
No, that's an excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
No, that's an absolutely brilliant response to cover the aspects, I guess, where, let's say, on the eating side, right? So, I'm one of the crazy Srinivasans. I eat anything that walks, flies, swims, or crawls, you know, and so I've never really had that kind of issue. But I can share with you that I was the first non-Anglo-Saxon rig manager in the North Sea. Okay? So, the other aspect of being different, if you like. And his point is 100% on the ball. It's really what you bring to the table. My way of adjusting around that is, I find it's extremely useful when, for example, I have the ability to tell jokes in fluent Scottish.
Oh, yes, we can. You
All
want
right?
to?
So, so what happens is now the 10 Scotsmen around the table and I'm reading, and also back to his point, and the chef coming to his table, everyone looking at this weirdo telling Scottish jokes as good as everyone else, right? So again, using the disadvantage to the advantage. I think that point is very well made.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely the aspect of food, which is one item. One of the things that we deal with is we have consultants that come in, some of them Texans, and we have to help them understand that, yeah, you can eat meat and potatoes, but you've got to learn how to eat sushi. Because if a client wants to go to a sushi restaurant, you've got to figure out, okay, if you're going there, are there some vegetarian options or are there some other options that you can choose? And you at least got to learn how to do that. Yeah, you want to have a steak every time, but let's try to figure out how to make it work the other way as well, right? There's also an aspect of just trying to get exposed to different kinds of things. But they've written, book in cowboy country, right? But there's some aspect of that you have to think about. And so, for example, personal story, I went out with some folks that were going to go clay shooting. I said, all right, I'm interested. I'm in. Never really picked up a gun before. Let's try to figure this out. Today, I actually own a shotgun, and I enjoy it. So those are the kinds of things where you've got to try to figure out what's there, just try to get exposed to it, and go with the flow. Some things will click, some will not.
Yeah, but your question is really about, we are all different here.
Yes.
They're literally Indians in cowboy country, right? And we all bring a lot of differences to the table, and the key component, situational component in creating trust is the degree of similarities. Okay? But degrees of similarity doesn't necessarily mean looking and acting like the other person. Your values, your integrity, your predictability, all those elements should shine right through so that this is the first time in the last 50 years or so, or maybe 80 years or so, we're really living in a globalized world. Before that, everybody was tribal. If you looked a little different, and somebody who was a stranger came into your midst, it was either a combination of fight or flight. Okay? Everybody was either accepted, fight or flight. You run away or being different was, from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, it was absolutely the wrong thing to be. And today we're still tribal, but you really cannot give up, some, 10 million years of human evolution in the last 50 years. You understand that? So, what you need to do is do it at a next level, which is not the conscious, visible, or essential level, but to do it at a completely different level, so that your sincerity comes through. And all the elements that Karthik talked about, Sandy talked about humor, Karthik talked about food. Again, he talked about food because you brought up food. But that is just one of the externalities that you believe that stops you. Okay? But that's not it. We all have disadvantages. Texans themselves have disadvantages. You can see how Rick Perry gets treated by media in New England. There is something about being Texan that the rest of the country thinks is very different. And you and I know they are not. So, being different is important, and even from an USB standpoint, you've got to remember that you have to be different in an important way. Okay? So, use your difference and show that your difference is important to them, and that's the way you overcome whatever perceived deficiencies you think you have in terms of pursuing your opportunities. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
No, there was somebody here who had a question.
May I just add one more thing to your question? Yeah, just a very quick one to your question. Taking up on what Pradeep said about perceived deficiency. So let's assume for a minute that you do have them in terms of not deficiency, but perceived deficiencies. Okay? a level, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say 6. Let's assume that for a minute. What I want to suggest to you is, the people that you're interacting with, that level, even if it's perceived to be a deficiency, is probably very low. So you're making it out in your own mind to be a bigger problem than it really is. That's the only thing I want to add to that, just to make it feel.
And the important word is perceived. It's not, maybe not real too. Keep in mind.
Yeah, that's true. Thank
Don't
you.
use it as an excuse, okay? If I
Yeah.
have to put it bluntly,
That's
okay, let me tell you something. You want to be successful, don't blame what you are, okay? Blame what you can do for the customer or the other person, okay? Take the higher road in terms of delivering something that is of value to those people, that creates trust in those people. These things are trivial matters, okay? There are ways of getting around it, and people really don't judge you by that. And if you're dealing with people who do judge you by that, they're the wrong people to be dealing with. You're not in the right circles. You know, like one of the old sayings that we have here in Texas is that if you hang around with the turkeys, you'll never soar like an eagle. Take the higher road. Go soar like the eagle, and let all these trivial differences or what you think perceived differences go behind and pick on people who don't see it at all.
Thanks a lot.
He had a question. I mean, yeah, you did.
Thanks, Pradeep. Very good presentation on the values. Really right on. Pritesh, I really liked the LinkedIn part. I did not. I was very impressed with the way you have done some of these things. So I've taken some action items that I need to do with my profile. A question I have for Sandy. Before that, just thank you, Karthik, that listening is really, I was not just interested, but also get impressed, part of it, just to add a little bit, rather than impressing someone, be impressed. And Dale Carnegie had one quick line I just want to share with everyone, was in 2 years, he did actually research and stuff, where he wrote, in 2 weeks, if you be a good listener, you develop so meaningful relationship that you want that in 2 years if you're trying to impress someone. And just something to share. But Sandy, a quick question for you.
Sorry, before your question. So you really appreciated the other three? I'm the idiot. Okay, I'm just teasing you. I'm just good.
The question is, and this question is actually, I know where your quadrant here, and then eventually we try to go there as we get older and get wiser. And before, in early part, we're hungry and trying to grow. You try to grow in that upper quadrant, and then it's a sake of maturity part that doesn't come that usual, and also part of that where you earn enough or whatever you want to call it, stability enough, then you start to think about giving, the last phase of life, and coming early on, it's really valuable. So just for some, not me, but there are younger people, how do you motivate them to do that giving early on? And it's very tough. Because you're trying to get for your family, yourself, you're struggling to earn and change that mindset to giving that early. It's not easy, but I just want some tips.
It's a superb point you brought up, and in my talk that I give on networking, where I stress that this question always comes up. Okay, so thank you for asking that question. So let's take an example of, as you rightly said, let's say somebody looking for his first job. Okay, would you fit that category? That category of too early to be thinking of giving. He's looking for his first job, right? So he would fit that category, right? How many guys writing their first resume, a resume for any job, forget about even the first, anyone, how many of them focus it on the company they are applying to as opposed to themselves? It's the principle. It's not necessarily, charity begins at home, no question about that. That's your point, valid, taken, ticked off. But the concept of that giving, you're applying for your first job. Just think about these two resumes. Resume number 1. My name is Sunny, blah, 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 and I've done this, and I've done this, and I'm good at this, and I've done this, and I've been good at this, and I've done this, and I've got this skills, and I've studied this subject, and I got grade point, blah, 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 blah. Guys lost you halfway already, right? Seriously, I'm making a very important point. Now, think of it the other way. By the way, my name is so-so, I look at your company, and I think in this particular department, this particular skill set could be used, and that's where I think, my humble opinion, is going to add value to that department. I would love to be given an opportunity to help that department succeed, and hopefully the company succeed as a result. You've applied exactly the principle of my quadrant. You're in that area, phase of life when, yeah, you can say, I'm not in the giving phase. And you've done it, right? I mean, I take that as an example. I can go with more examples, but it's that concept of turning what we standardly do one way, but turning it around the other way. Another example is volunteer at events. You may not, it's not necessarily about, giving in terms of money, or you can give time. Volunteer at events, get involved in whatever takes your take this as an example, okay? The four of us are here, right? It's great fun. It's somewhat in that quadrant, okay? But in fairness, there's tremendous difference for me, and I'm sure all of the other people agree. I get to meet a wonderful bunch of people, right? And who knows, 10 years down the road where this may lead, right? I don't know. I'm not doing it because, I'm counting the clock now, okay, 9 years out, 9.5, no, but you see what I mean. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
I'm very tempted to add something to this. This reminds me of something.
It's open to
If
everyone. If you have any suggestions,
Sure.
too.
I was just, when I grew up, my mom said this very nicely, and I thought it's about giving, right? It's not about, so give people what is of least value to you, but of great value to them. That's also giving. Okay? So if money is of too much of value to you, that's not what we're talking about here. Give what is of least value to you, but of most value to the other person, that's giving. So you can define it that way.
And I think a key thing with that is when you're giving, you shouldn't be thinking about it as a transaction. It's, I'm here, I'm going to contribute, I'm going to provide some time. So for example, in your case, you might say, hey, you know what, great talk, I've got some points that I've jotted down. Maybe this evening, I'm going to write something up, put this in the newsletter that goes out, and I'd like to put it out there. Now again, you're not thinking that I'm going to put it in a newsletter and people are going to see it and somebody's going to connect. No, I just want to do it because I think this is a great conversation. It's important for everyone to hear this. You do something because you just want to give. Somewhere along, somebody will recognize that, and that's when, to Sandeep's point, that there will be a lot of benefit from that.
But you're creating a foundation of trust. Think of it this way. You want to live a life of a good citizen, create that foundation of trust as widely as you can. Okay? It is like a foundation to a building. You can't go wrong with it. Okay? And the higher and deeper and stronger that foundation, the more you can build on it. Okay? But the idea is not to build things as much as just creating it, because you may get nothing out of it, but for your children, for your family, that foundation of trust is just phenomenal. You need to understand that. It translates very well across individuals and across, you all have a common last name, right? The next time somebody sees that same last name, the fact that you created a foundation of trust essentially translates to somebody else who may be a stranger to you today. Okay, could be a brother from somewhere else. So think a little broader than just yourself. Think also of people who are part of your community. Think of everybody else, because it is, at the end of the day, what we want to do is raise the standard of our entire community. Okay? It's not just about individuals. People typically go through 3 phases in their lives. Very early in their lives, it's all about self-interest. Then the important thing is, the stages that we are all in, you all are in, it's about reciprocity. Never take anything without giving something back. Think of it that way. Okay? It has to be a life of reciprocity at a minimum, but verging on altruism, which is giving a lot more than you take. Okay? And this is the transition that we all, in the business world, we all need to start thinking about, because, and I'll tell you, country, altruism plays a very important role. This is the most generous country in the world. I can give you statistics about it. And we have good role models around us. Ask people what they do in their free time. Okay? You'll find them doing charity, building homes, doing this, that, etc. And especially as Christmas and the holiday season come up, let's learn some lessons from them. Okay? It's very important. I mean, I agree with what somebody said. Even giving something, it can be in a very small way, even something like getting a job. Okay? That is also very transactional. I think a lot larger than where you are today.
It's a small addition, if I may, right? I don't know you. I met you today, right? Don't ask me how, but I guarantee you, your friends will tell you, say, you seem to be a very nice guy. You seem to put a lot of pressure on yourself, okay? You're a gentle kind of person, right? So I just want to add to this as well, that at the same time, you shouldn't feel pressure, because these two things are also crucial. If you cannot do something, you have to look in the eye, and be honest about it, sincerely, back to the trust, right? I can't do it. I'm really sorry, but I can't do it. Either you don't have the time or the resources or whatever. But by golly, if you say you're going to do it, do it. These two are both important, right?
And it has to be good enough, not be your best of your ability. It has to be good.
You may say 99 times out of 100, I can't do it. That's okay. The one time you say, do it. And then that will start to, man, you tell this guy something, he takes care of business. And I'm deliberately translating it into the back to the top quadrant, right? Right?
I think that's it. Are we done?
Yes.
No, yes,
Yeah, that's the last question. I'm sure otherwise we'll be here. This is such an interesting topic and the audience.
Yes, sir.
Sure. My name is Rupesh and I'm into e-commerce business. And what I find is like, before I got into e-commerce, I was into technology side, like technology company business. What I find is that in e-commerce there is this one invisible wall that I find. Say if I want to connect with somebody, it's just either like, I'm talking through somebody, like either I'm talking to someone through email or like, it is very important, like very rare for me to find a person whom I'm talking to other end. And then the whole this networking thing, like, I like the most of the things that at least the way I've seen, I can take back to my job that I was doing and I can apply it. But when it comes to e-commerce or when it comes to technology world, while it made it simpler for me to connect with my cousins in India, but it made it a lot harder to connect with somebody whom I'm doing business with. Any clue, ideas?
He's the guy.
Sure.
Okay, so let's think about one of the biggest e-commerce companies that's out there, Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay. Got a number of suppliers on Amazon. One of the key things that Amazon figured out, and this is something that's out there, which is anybody that's buying, you want to try to figure out, is this somebody that I want to buy services from? So they've got a 5-star rating, right? And so, yes, you've got an e-commerce relationship, but even within there is an aspect of trust, is an aspect of review, is an aspect of feedback. You've got anxiousness. Providing services through an e-commerce company. Again, it comes down to anxiousness, the reason why it's successful, and a lot of people sign up for that is because they want somebody that they can trust and get a review that this plumber that's going to come in is really going to take care of business in my house. The person's not going to be late, the person's going to be professional, show up on time, and give you a fair quote for the work, right? So yes, technology has enabled a sense of kind of disconnect in a way that was there previously. Technology also enables the ability to rapidly collect a lot of that feedback and bring back a lot of that same evaluation.
But I think, if I understand his question.
My question was not, it was a bit different. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I think what I understood his question was that how to make more of a personal connections on the other side of the business and not like on the professional side which you answered. I think that's what I understand.
That's what, yeah, I mean, so
Let me
if
make
I
an
want,
attempt.
sorry?
Let me make an attempt at suggesting.
Okay.
Honest dialogue, okay? I said honest dialogue. How many others in that e-commerce space do you think are going through the same thing?
I mean, my gut feeling would be plenty.
Plenty, right?
Yeah.
I love that answer. So, what stops you from starting an e-commerce get-together every Friday, happy hour, let's meet at Sleep Release and play pool? Somebody has to start it. Why don't you start it?
That's a,
And if you need, there are plenty of them. My goodness, finally somebody has figured this out. That we e-commerce guys need a hug and a pat on the back. And a little cuddle, you know.
right.
And wonderful things will happen, trust me.
Yes.
And by the way, you might do it. 6 months later, you might curse me, this idiot, you know, I tried this, nothing happened. Doesn't matter. You tried, you know. I'm sorry, I'm just passionate about it.
Yeah, no, perfect.
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects to this. One, which is from a professional perspective, if you're purchasing services through an e-commerce platform, if you're providing that. But on a personal basis, I think what Sunny said, which is go back to the basics. Connect up with people, look for a reason to connect up. Find events where you can do that. Alumni organizations, conferences, just a common bond that all of you share. And look for ways to participate in something there. Host an event, organize an event, all of those things in some way will pay. But again, don't do it because you think it will pay. Do it because you feel it's the right thing to do.
See, I mean, okay, let me, yeah, my gut feeling is that, like, you know, that we, I mean, all of us have to figure a way out to the way we, I mean, I've experienced it, the way when I speak to somebody face to face, it's a completely different world, as if I'm talking to somebody on a different planet than talking somebody on the phone and less so on the email. Correct. So that is where I'm trying, like, because see, like this e-commerce, I mean, I have a relation, like I need to keep relation with somebody on East Coast, West Coast, and everywhere in the world. Thing is that, like, you know, I mean, like what I'm trying to figure it out is how to do it through phone and email, because I mean, I can give you a few examples that, like, you know, sending 100 emails would not help, but probably meeting somebody one time and explaining him the situation or whatever, explaining the business would help tremendously. But
let me ask a simple question, few questions. Is the products that you're selling on your e-commerce site? I mean, we are talking about creating customer networks, correct?
I'm talking about creating a professional network.
Personal network. So,
personal network of people like you?
No, I think it's more about the vendors and
more about vendors, right? I mean, more about vendors or the, like, say for example, I mean, I know that I can do like X million of dollar business on Amazon Japan, for example, right? But now I know a person that I would, like, you know, can help me, but to make a network with him, it's not only for the helping purpose, but even like, you know, it's like creating that relation so that, like, you know, he understands that I'm genuine about what I'm saying, and then, you know, make a bond, make a connection, and, like, you know, maybe let's do some business eventually.
See, but ultimately you're talking about a business transaction, right?
Yes.
Okay, when you're talking about a business transaction, then it takes it completely into all the elements that these gentlemen talk about, which is essentially you've got to know what is the unique value proposition that you're providing them, and make sure that it is very clearly and loudly heard. If that usually takes it. I mean, there's also issues when I can go into business, something I teach. I can go into all kinds of details in it, but the most important thing that you need to have is that you've got to know who those people are, you know, and how do you reach them and what influences them. Okay?
Influence, that would be key word. I mean, how can I influence them?
Let me try this a different way. He talked about what you need to write in your cover letter, about when you apply for a job. Think the same thing for your influence, whoever you're trying to meet. The best way I would characterize it in one line is, what makes you passionate about your business makes you a lousy salesperson. Okay? That's the one line I would always tell people. You have to stop talking about your business, stop talking about what you have to offer, what you have to do. Really understand what you do in the context of what they want. Their business model, their pain points, their organizations. Like the classic example was the example he just mentioned where he talked about a cover letter or a resume that reflects that. That what is true for your individual is true for business too. And so you're very interested in meeting with them. Forget about what you know again. Try to figure out what are they looking for. That would be class act and fees.
Sorry, before I take your question, I just want to add something to you, right? So, I'm in this world where everyone's behind walls and behind computers and all the stuff. You never really connect face to face. You gave me this brilliant idea of, get people together for Slick Willies. That's useless because I connect people from East Coast, West Coast. They can't come to play Slick Willy pool with me in the evenings, broadly speaking, right? So, here's another idea. Do you know any Bond in the space of e-commerce? And when I say Bond, I mean James Bond, somebody who's really renowned in e-commerce, somebody whose name is big. Figure it out. You find some big guy like that. You say, you know what, 2 Fridays from now, this entire little network of mine is behind computers. We're going to have a Skype conference call with this Bond going to present his thoughts on e-commerce. A lot of people are welcome to attend on Skype. At least you see their face. Okay, that's the best I can do.
Thank you. I have a similar I have a question on the same line, but in a different setting. So I work for an operating company, and I work with business partners in different parts of the globe. So I deal with them, and most of them are on a different timeline than I am. So a lot of my communication is via email or messages, or if I'm lucky, on phone. So the thing is, for me, when I'm in Houston and I have some project people, I deal with them. It's easier to build that relationship, that network. But when these people, I hardly get a chance to meet them or see them face to face. Yes, we do business on email and messaging, but that bond, that relationship, it doesn't click, or it's not clicks at the level that it clicks when I see that person on face to face. So, do you guys have any?
And the good example.
You cannot replace face-to-face meeting. Okay. So the important thing to recognize is when you've got these other methods of creating this relationship. Okay. Now you've got other impediments along the way. You've got to figure out some way by which you can meet all these people. Because how many of you, some of you, this is something I started recently, and it's created quite an interesting response. I experimented with it. I have the same issue, right? I know a lot of people out there. I mean, my internet, my email lists are pretty long. Especially people I met maybe once or twice, and I have their business card. I have all these information. One of the things I've started doing now, particularly when I want to send a business email, I put my photograph. How many of you use your photograph on your emails? One. Because what you're losing when you're doing an email conversation is an understanding of what that other person looks like. So what stops you from putting your photograph on it? Take a good photograph and put it on it in your signature. And that's what I do. Sometimes you get emails from me with my pictures. He doesn't need to know what I look like. Okay? But some people I know.
It does make sense.
But when I'm, let's say, literally, I'm sending out, again, I like to give first. Okay, no question about it. The most important thing that I do with my environment, which is very, very large, is make sure, like Pratish said, the joke is just for my friends. And Sandeep also get it. Karthik is not yet my friend. He doesn't get it. But whenever I see a good joke, for example, that cartoon, the Dilbert cartoon, I read the comics every day. okay? I even contribute jokes to the Houston Chronicle, okay? And a lot of people in the city know me because of that. Are you the same Pradeep who contributes jokes? I get phone calls at home from strangers saying, I love your joke today, Chronicle. I mean, I just do it because I enjoy good jokes, okay? That's what Sandy and I have this thing about jokes. But that is just one part of it. But try to personalize whatever communication you have. That's why Skype is important. Okay? Having a Skype conversation where you can see faces is very important because now you're talking about it. It doesn't matter. You may be, on different time zones and all that. But try to make it face-to-face in any way you can. Get rid of the impersonal aspects of communications that are there. Phone calls. Okay, whenever you have a phone conversation, it becomes very, very specific to business. The same conversation in person takes a lot longer. How long are your personal meetings when you go for a meeting? Half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour? The business content is how much? 10 minutes. But yet, both sides, it's both sides. You have maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes of other conversation that takes place. So you've got to recognize that similarly, email conversations, phone conversations, you need to be able to, I'm using a bad word because that's the first one that comes to my mind. You've got to surround it with factors which are personal. You've got to do that. You cannot expect just sending a terse one-liner, the email you saw was a joke, a terse one-liner and expect a personal relationship with it. You send a one-liner and they don't know who you are, you're not smiling or what kind of mood you're in. Personalize it. Everybody has a different way of doing it. I have my way of doing it. And sometimes I see interesting things come out of it. Sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't bother me. But that's the way I am. I like to take everything that is business-oriented and personalize it. That's the way I am. My brother is very similar. Our conversations on the phone are never short. Not just between brothers, but all of us. They're never short. Well, how long did we talk that day? Half an hour, 45 minutes? So that's what I'm talking about. If you keep it, this is the point. When I talk to people, I can very quickly tell where they fall into these three categories. Self-interest, reciprocity, and altruistic. Reciprocity, I can handle very nicely, but surrounded with personal factors, you have great conversations. That's all I'm suggesting. All these, you also talked about it. How do you personalize it? Figure out ways to personalize it. And that's what all e-commerce sites have done. Beginning with Netflix. I use Netflix as a better e-commerce site than Amazon. I'm a big fan of both. The reason I became a big Netflix fan is because I'm a big movie buff. I see thousands of movies. I've rated 2,800 movies on Netflix, but they recommend movies to me. That is phenomenal value because I cannot understand all the movies in the world. But what they have done is taken one step further and personalized their relationship with me, saying, we understand you and here is what we can do for you. They're giving way ahead of the pack. And you know what? The competition, I remember the competition that they had for that. They were looking for that algorithm. They paid $1 million for it. And this was like 12 years ago. I didn't have the algorithm. I liked the idea. All I'm saying is personalize it.
Okay, let's take the next step.
So just a quick thing to kind of wrap that up. Emails are probably the most impersonal aspect of communication. When you've had two emails go back and forth and you see that it's kind of in that direction, pick up the phone. If you see that, okay, you're picking up the phone, you're still not able to resolve this, is it time to actually make a trip in some way or get on a video conference call? If you actually have a meeting and you go and visit with somebody, make sure to set up time so that it's not just about the meeting, but then there's dinner afterwards where you're going to get to know the person, that person's going to get to know you. you're going to talk about something that's of common interest, and then the next time, when you send an email, there's all the relationship that's there with it, and you're now operating at a different level.
I think that's a very good point. I deal with in Latin America for sure, and they bring the personal relationship when they meet you. They are going to ask you about how's your family, how they are doing, which we don't do out here. So that's something that I learned when I go out there and meet people out there, is talking about their personal life before you talk about business.
Oh, for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, you need time when you go to meet them. Right. Definitely.
Everything, nothing works, talk about something, always works.
Depends where you are and who you are talking to. Well, I want to thank all of you for taking the time out on Sunday afternoon and coming out there. And I have a homework for all of you. We are going to go with the statistics which was presented by Karthik. Let's see your networking skill. So we are looking at 10 people, each of you. Let's see your networking skill and bringing them to this forum next time. So I'm going to look at your final statistics. 2 of them are going to stick around. So in 6 months.
At least one will be that's a good idea.
So the idea is to make this forum more useful to others. And since when we started this thing, I think I've learned a lot. And from the speakers like you all who have come out here and shared your experience with us. And I think I speak for everybody out here. Thank you again for coming out here.
Okay, just for some fun. Test of listening skills. He's way ahead of his time. Why did I say that? No, he said, thank you for coming out on Sunday afternoon. Today's Saturday.
Small token of appreciation from the school. And we have a book out here which gives a different perspective to what we have talked about. And